Thank you for joining us for Season 5, Episode 9 of Adventures in Fly Tying. And now here's your host, Joe Cornwall.
Welcome to another episode of Adventures in Fly Tying. I'm your host, Joe Cornwall. Today we have a very interesting fly for you. As is usual, we seem to be going down the path of tying flies that fish don't see too often anymore, and this is no exception. There was a fly that was a wet fly that came out in the middle of the 19th century in England called the Alexandra. Beautiful little lake fly. Was named after Princess Alexandra, as I understand it, and it's designed with a peacock herl wing, originally used with peacock swords, very green peacock swords, and a silver tinsel body and a standard wet fly design. A lake fly, sometimes used also for sea trout in the British Isles. Well, it made its way across the ocean to the United States, where it eventually became the Alexandra streamer in that move towards a lot of streamer adaptations that started in Maine with landlocked salmon. And today it's just as effective as it ever was. But that's not the end of the story. The Alexandra is a spectacular fly, but not to be outdone, Hardy, the same guys who make the rods and reels, Hardy Brothers, was also a fly fishing and fly pattern manufacturer and innovator in the first part of the 20th century. And Hardy came up with a variation of this pattern called the Hardy Brothers Demon, and that's what we're going to tie today. Let's take a look at this. Isn't this a pretty little fly? Very simple little, I guess you could almost call it a bucktail, even though we're not really using fur for this. But as you can see, it's a simple silver body, and that silver tinsel ribbed with oval gold tinsel. Now in the original Alexandra, the tail is red swan or red goose quill, which is or duck quill, which is great, and I like that, and I love the way it looks on a fly. But goose quill really doesn't last very long once a fish tends to eat it. What the Hardy Brothers did is, in their pattern, they actually called for a red wool tail, which is something I probably would have substituted anyway. I love red wool tails on this kind of a fly. Also, the big difference between the Alexandra and the Hardy Brothers Demon is, in the Alexandra, this hackle is black, and in the Hardy Brothers Demon, it's blue. Here we're using a silver Dr. Blue. Let's take a look at the materials we're using for this very pretty little streamer. We're going to be using a 3XL streamer hook, and you can use pretty much any 3XL streamer hook you'd like. Here I'm using a classic 79-580 Mustad in size 8. This is a petite trout style streamer fly, also awesome for low water smallmouth, so sizes 6, 8s, even 10s are great. The tail, of course, a little bit of red yarn, just a little nub of red yarn. The body is going to be a flat medium silver tinsel. Use a metal tinsel if you want a slightly heavier fly to sink, or a mylar as we're using here, ribbed with an fine oval silver tinsel, and then the hackle, which is applied as a full hackle and pulled down, in this case is a silver Dr. Blue rooster saltwater cape. You could use hen hackle if you had that, or you could tie this beard style also. Now for the wing, we're going to use in this particular instance strung natural peacock herl. Ideally you would want to use very bright green peacock herl. If you can find a bright green peacock herl, sometimes it's sold that way, or you can buy peacock eyes and do that. I like to prepare the wings because these tips are never ever going to remain the same. So I like to pull these out, even them up, and kind of even off that wing, and we can end up with a very pretty fly. Let's go ahead and tie this and see how we end up. I'm going to put the Mustad hook into the vise and lay down a simple thread base. Now, on this particular fly, one of the things that you want to do is you want to start this thread about 2 hook eyes back from where you want to finish the head. The reason for that is that gives me that much space to tie in the peacock herl wing, the hackle, the blue hackle, and finish the head. So that's kind of a starting spot. Now I'm going to just wrap a few wraps in a locking wrap, clip off my thread, and take up a piece of red yarn. Now you can clip this ahead of time, a little bit longer than what you need it. It's very important with a tinsel body that you have a smooth underbody. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch that red yarn back nice and tight, wrap very simple, clean turns to a point right above that hook barb. Now, to get the right tail length, I'll put my scissors in right at the end of the hook bend and clip. Now I have exactly the right length that I want for that particular fly. Now, the next step that I want to do is tie in my oval tinsel, and to do that I'm going to bring my thread back up to the front. Once again, we want to keep a very smooth underbody, and I'm going to start that oval tinsel right there where I started that red yarn. Once again, come back in nice smooth turns. Now, one of the things I'm going to do is, you see, I'm going to leave about 1 tinsel's width behind it that I haven't tied down. Now, the next step that I want to do after I get that out of the way is to take my flat silver tinsel. In this case, I'm using a Mylar. And I do like to use metal tinsel on these flies. It's very traditional, very classic. And I'm going to tie that in. Now I'm going to advance my thread back to this point where I tied everything in, using touching smooth turns so I can get a really smooth underbody for this fly. And I'm using a 6/0 70 denier black thread. I think this is a Danville thread, but it's a standard fly tying thread, standard size that you would use, so nothing special about that. Now, start by making your first turn with the tinsel, lift up that silver tinsel, make a turn, a full turn behind it. And that's going to keep the ribbing from sliding off of the back of the body, and also allows a cleaner start to that ribbing. Go ahead and move that ribbing material, which I have tied a little bit too long there, back out of the way, and wrap your body in touching turns of this silver tinsel, making sure that you're following that smooth underbody that you created. Now, you know, if you don't tie a lot of tinsel bodies, and of course when I was a kid and I started tying in the 1960s and the early 1970s, this was a pretty common way to body a fly, was a flat tinsel with an oval tinsel rib. But, you know, today we use a lot of crystal chenilles and sparkle materials and things like that. So some of this is a little bit unusual. A lot of folks don't use a tinsel body like this. Don't worry if you've got a few gaps and you can see the thread, or if the tinsel isn't quite perfectly smooth and looks like it was formed and burnished. The fish will eat it just fine. You know, we're not tying show flies here. We're tying flies so that we can go out and feed them to hungry smallmouth bass and hungry trout and hungry bluegills and hungry largemouth bass. And trust me when I tell you that if you are successful, and I'm sure that you will be, these flies are not going to look like this when you're done. Now, take your oval silver tinsel, and typically on a wet fly there's 5 ribs, and on a streamer fly there's 7 ribs. I'm going to get rid of that excess there. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's a good luck thing, like not walking under a ladder, I guess. I don't know why they came up with that, but that's the number that I usually see on streamer flies. Just a few thread wraps to lock that in and clip away the excess. Now, the body is ready to go. Now, I want to go ahead and take my hackle feather, and you're going to see that you have a shiny side. I want to tie this in shiny side up, laying flat back down over the body, 2 or 3 thread wraps. You'll also notice that I've kind of given a little base there for this. Pick this up and gently stroke the stroke the hackle fibers. If you don't lock it in, it's not going to stay there. Stroke those hackle fibers towards you so that you can get a good full collared hackle. Here we go. And now I'll get my hackle pliers. And really, I don't need a lot of hackle, because you're going to double this hackle up when you're done with this. So 3 turns of hackle, more than enough for this fly. There you go. 3 turns of hackle, that's all I need. Let's go ahead and lock that hackle tip under a couple of thread wraps and clip away the excess. Now, to make a drawn hackle like this, form a little pocket with your thumb and your finger, pull them down, and then wrap back over it. You can see that that hackle now comes out almost as a semicircular beard, about halfway around the fly. Now, get in this case, the peacock that we've already pre-measured and pre-bundled. I want that peacock curl wing to come out just beyond the end of that tail, so right about there. Wrap that in with a couple of tight wraps. Use my scissors to cut a bezeled or angled head on that so that I have a nice ramp to create my thread head on the fly. Create a neat thread head wrapping back up. And that's not going to be the neatest head I've ever made, but once again, I'm pretty sure that it'll fish. See if I can round that up, make it a little more bullet shape. There we go. Throw a half it or a whip finish on there. A simple little fly, something that you can tie very quickly, something that the fish haven't seen, something that your fellow anglers haven't seen. It can be your own little secret weapon. Add a little bit of Sally Hansen's Hard as Nails or the fly tying goo of your choice to make it shiny and hold together. And in this case, I think I need a little more Sally Hansen's Hard as Nails. I seem to be getting a little bit low on the bottle. And there you have it, the Hardy Brothers Demon. This is a variation of the Alexandra wet fly, which is this is also a variation of the Alexandra streamer fly, which is an adaptation of the wet fly. Pretty little fly, that'll catch just about anything in the creeks. Thanks for joining us on Adventures in Fly Tying. We hope to see you in the next episode. Till then, keep the rod tips high and tight lines.